Hey guys, welcome or welcome back. My name is JC. If you haven't seen my face before, today's video is my January reading wrap-up and February TBR. This morning I went back and rewatched my last wrap-up video because I remember that I had done something a little different. It was my November wrap-up. It was Bookmas Day 1, and I did not film a December wrap-up, mainly because I read 3 books. So there was not going to be much of a wrap-up to give, but I loved how I did my November wrap-up. I loved that it wasn't me just like sitting in one spot, hitting record and like, here's a stack of books. One by one, I talk about them. I like that there was just more to the video, and you guys like that as well. I got positive feedback on that. So I want to do something similar today, kind of same but different. I basically want to take you guys along with me as I would prep for a wrap-up video, and then obviously we'll do the wrap-up and we'll do the TBR portion. So if you only care about what I read this month, here's that timestamp. And if you only care about what I'll be reading in February, here's this timestamp. I just went through this whole like phone rabbit hole. I realized that I had not properly scheduled my weekly reading vlog to go live at 9, so it's now 10, and I was like, oh crap. So I went and made sure it went live, and then I went to Instagram because I usually like promote it on my story, like, hey, you know, my video's live with the link. And then I saw that these 2 book girlies that I've met through Bookstagram, and they also live in California, they came out with a podcast. They said that they were doing it, like they had posted it kind of on their personal accounts that they were coming out with it soon. But today is when they launched their first episode. So it's called Friends and Lovers Pod. Like that's their @name on Instagram. So you should totally check it out. I'm gonna have to give it a listen later when I'm done with all of my stuff. And then another person that I met through Bookstagram lives in California, local author. Remember I beta read his book like a couple months ago. It's called Look Away. His name is Julian Font, and he released it today. So then I wanted to promote that, and I'm like, okay guys, like go listen to this podcast. Oh my gosh, happy release day. And I'm like, okay, are we good now? Are we settled? So now I feel like I've done my book duties of the day on social media, and now we can get this wrap up going. So we have a little bit that we need to get done before we can do a wrap up. Like I need to make sure my Goodreads is up to date, that my reading journal is up to date, that my notes app on my phone is up to date, all these little things. And I was gonna do all that first and then go get like a drink, like a coffee or something. But I think I'd like to do that now, and then I have it to do all this stuff. So let's go get a drink to get this going.
I see it in your eyes. Yeah, I can read the signs. You need to get away. It's time we make a change.
Okay, I'm back with my matcha. I feel like if you watch my reading wrap-ups, then you would know like how much of a staple this drink is to have. And I thought I hadn't had one in so long. It turns out I just have better spending habits this year. Would you look at that? Because I actually had one at the beginning of the month, but I used to have probably 2 to 3 of these a week. Yeah, so I'm very proud of myself, but I also use my stars. So I just had like over 1,000 stars. I was like, girl, just use like 200 of your stars and get this for free, like girl math. But now we're back and I have stuff to do. So I want to first check on my reading journal. So I have a few spreads that I need to just update, like my reading goal for the year, like just kind of filling that in, the overall reading log for the year. Also, JC's library. This is like a bookshelf version of the reading log. I do need to pick, I guess, my best book in January. That'll be hard. And then for my like January spreads, like identifying some of the books I read this month, because this is somewhat updated, and then also my page tracker and like some stats and things. So that is what I'm gonna do now.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know if I will ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm
Okay, we are done with the reading journal. That is good to go. I want to double check my Goodreads. I did check it last night when I was updating my last book of the month, so hopefully it's good. It's mainly checking that all the books I've read so far this month are properly accounted for in like the reading challenge goal side, because if you don't add the dates that you read the book, then it doesn't know to like count it towards your annual goal. So Okay, it shows all of them. I've also been much better about actually posting reviews on my Goodreads. So if you want to follow my Goodreads, it's always linked down below and you get kind of more real time, and then also just like cohesive thoughts. I feel like sometimes in videos, if I ramble about a book, I don't always touch on everything that I like put in the review. So that's a way for you to check that out. Okay, I think I'm set on like the prep for reading wrap-up side of things, but I need to spend a minute thinking about the TBR side. I think because I'm doing this last minute, I'll just go ahead and post some polls on my Instagram story like I mentioned, but then next month maybe we can think of something a little more creative. So I'm going to figure out kind of what books and stuff that I want to post on there, and then we'll post some stories. Okay, so I went ahead and posted 3 polls on my Instagram story, so that way they can just sit there while we do the wrap-up portion. People can vote, and then we can see the results at the end. But I do want to show you the books that I chose to go up on those polls. So the first one is I kind of wanted, putting similar things against similar things, you know what I mean? So I know that these are both kind of academic and kind of a darker academic feel. So I've chosen Ninth House and The Secret Society. The next one is choosing between which Rebecca Ross book. So I have The Queen's Rising that someone like posted on maybe a YouTube video that this book is so underrated by her. So I know that it's not often talked about. So we have The Queen Rising and A River Enchanted. And then the last one I posted because I wanted to know which book they wanted a reading vlog for. So I may do both of these as a reading vlog, but I just wanted the poll to be a little different. So Never by Jessa Hastings and Powerless. I plan to buddy read this with someone, so I mean, this is getting read no matter what. And I did plan to do a reading vlog for this, but maybe, you know, people will want this one more. So I may do it for both. I may do it for one. I don't know. So this was the last poll. I also have other books that I'm reading for other videos, so I already know that there'll be more, and we'll talk about those at the end when I actually do the TBR portion, but those are the books that are on all the polls. Okay, so now we can get into the reading wrap-up. I'm going to give you guys a couple stats of this month so you can kind of gauge how it went. I read 10 books this month, and the average rating was 4.2 stars, so overall, amazing reading month. I read 4,365 pages. Now, I like tracking the number of pages I read because sometimes just like a number of books doesn't really gauge like how much you read. So when I compare it to November, in November I read 8 books and I read 2,748 pages. So I read 2 more books this month, but I read like 1,600 more pages this month. So I read a lot more like longer books this month, and so it just kind of makes me have a better understanding of how much I read. Usually I would talk about these in the order that I read them, but because of what I read this month, I'm just going to talk about them in kind of the order that makes the most sense. First up is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And Max Gladstone. So duo author. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I wanted to read this book for a few months, but I knew that it was just out of my comfort zone, so I'd always been a little hesitant. So I was so glad that I got this book for Christmas because it definitely helped, you know, bump it to the top of my reading list. When I first read the back of this book, it just stuck with me. I was like, I know that this book is gonna be beautiful. And it was. This is a short but beautiful love story, unlike anything I've honestly read before. Now, did this book make sense to me? Not really, no. Like, there's a lot of confusing parts to this, but did I feel that love across space and time? Yes. I'm just going to read 2 sentences from the back. It says, red belongs to the agency, a post-singularity technotopia. Blue belongs to Garden, a single vast consciousness embedded in all organic matter. What? This book is so unique. If you've read the back of it and you're like, literally what? Give it a shot. If you have any like kind of intrigue with this book, give it a shot. It was so beautiful and so unique. Next up is The One I Love by Shel Sloan. I think that's how you pronounce that author's name, but I gave this book 4 stars. And it is book 3 in the Rolling Hills like interconnected standalone series. And I received this book as an ARC. When I first received it, I just remember feeling like, you know, I just don't know if I'm in the mood for like just a romance because I was reading so much fantasy and fantasy romance. Boy, was I wrong. This book had me giggling several times. This was my first Shel Sloan book, so I loved her writing style and her pacing, and I just love interconnected standalones in general because you can kind of just jump in wherever. The only spoiler you get is if 2 characters got together, which like, duh, you can still go back and read the other books and kind of see how that developed and progressed. So like, I just love that. I love those types of series. Shane and Amelia are 2 main characters and I just adored them. The premise of this book and series, I guess, is you have this group of like 5 friends that were best friends in high school, 4 guys, 1 girl, and you kind of get all their love stories. Now, Shane and Amelia are both a part of that group, and so their love story is extra special, you know what I mean? But I love it. So they're best friends in high school, and now we're like 17 years later, and you just kind of have this brief prologue of them graduating high school and like stuff that happened, and then now 17 years later, they're like best friends, and now their, you know, love story is able to happen. So I just loved it, and I love their communication. I loved how they handled like all the different obstacles thrown this way from like themselves along with like outside forces. Oh my gosh, I just adored them so much. I also loved how they touched on the different side characters because you kind of got glimpses into them, and I would definitely at some point go back and read the first 2 books, but I can definitely say that book 4 is coming out I think this year in a couple months, and I am dying for it. It is Simon's story, and like, I need that. I need Simon's story. Y'all, this next book, oh my gosh, I just read my review on it to kind of like give myself a refresher. I read this towards the beginning of the month, so I was just like, wow, I forgot how much you literally fell in love. Okay, this next one, Evergreen by Autumn Woods. Oh my gosh, this book, 5 stars. Let's just start with that, 5 stars. This book is so underrated as a fantasy romance. It is Autumn's first ever book, and that blows my mind. The balance of her POVs, outstanding. The pacing, immaculate. The way she had the character development through everyone, the main characters, the side characters, like I just formed so many attachments to everyone. The found family in this had me bawling several times, and our 2 main characters, Raina and Roxanne, I think is how you pronounce both of those. Oh my gosh, I was giggling in public. I had absolutely no control while reading this book. These 5 kingdoms of Ytaris, I think? Y-T-E-R-R-A-S. Sounds like a legit pronunciation to me. It was just so fun. Like, I had so much fun being a part of this. I loved the plot. It was more than a romance, but there was so much romance. But I just loved that the main plot of the actual kingdom side of things was so intriguing the entire way, and then we got equal romance that had me losing my mind. Like, I was hooked from the first page to the last page. Please, Autumn Woods, please give me a second book, give me another book. Like, this concluded in such a way that I think it's a standalone, but ultimately, this was an amazing story about an assassin and a king. Honestly, that's all I want to tell you guys. Please go read this book. Now we can get on to my Bridget Kimmer binge. Guys, I don't know what happened, but 7 of my 10 books that I read this month were by one author. Like, what? And I am proud to announce that I started and finished 2 trilogies this month. Since when do I start and finish any series, any trilogy, anything? Like, that's just not normal for me, so I am very proud of myself. Okay, we had to change the battery, but I want to talk about the Cursebreaker Trilogy first. So here she is. We have book 1, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, book 2, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, and in book 3, A Vow So Bold and Deadly. First up, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, I gave this book 4 stars. Now this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Guys, this book, book 1, intrigue and confusion alone made me binge this 500-page book That's what got this to a 4-star for me, because ultimately I could not put it down. Like, I had to see things through. Now, what is strange is, you know, Beauty and the Beast retelling. I would assume romance, right? You know, like, I'm thinking romance, and obviously you want to root for your main characters to get together. Now, I was not rooting for our two main POVs, Harper and Ren, to get together. But ultimately, it was a fun retelling, and I loved how, like, strong, independent, but also kind our main female character was. Now, it's spoken that she has, she has cerebral palsy, and I liked how it's discussed in the book. Obviously, I do not have that, so I can't speak to, like, the representation of how well it is, but I do like how Bridget, like, talked about it and made it something that's, like, our main character, Harper, who has it, she's like, listen, I was born with this. I was born with it, and I'm going to die with it. So it is what it is. You know, like, I just like that it didn't defeat Harper, you know, as, like, this disability that now she just can't do anything, and she just thinks she's, like, helpless and hopeless type thing. Like, no, she just owns it. And I do like that part of that representation. So I went into this. It was fun. The ending had me like, shut up, on to book 2 because I need to know what happens. So enters book 2, A Heart So Fierce and Broken. I gave this book 3.5 stars. So book 1, I'm entering it thinking 50-50, fantasy romance, intrigue and confusion about, you know, this story, the plot. The romance alone made me see it through. I gave it 4 stars, but ultimately, like, I wasn't obsessing over everything. I was like, why? I can't stop reading it, but I don't know why. Enter book 2, where I have that same mindset, thinking I'm getting fantasy romance 50-50. No. Halfway through, I shifted my mindset to recognizing Bridget Kimmerer is writing this story, this fantasy story, with a very tiny subplot of romance and a lot more found family, friendship, mental health representation, and, you know, this character growth and development along the way. So once I switched to that mindset, I enjoyed this book a lot more. I love that this book takes off right where book 1 ends, and I also love that she adapted the POVs to help further the plot, and it just made sense. So I just love getting kind of different viewpoints from the characters that we were introduced to in book 1. And guys, all these side characters are just, like, so cherished, honestly. Like, I adore them. On to book 3. Book 3, the final book, A Vow So Bold and Deadly. I gave this book 4 stars. I went into it with that shifted mindset, like, girl, stop thinking you're getting a 50-50 fantasy romance, and would you look at that? I enjoyed the book. When I ended this book, I was like, okay, this is a little bittersweet. Like, I'm done with these characters, but at the same time, a trilogy was perfect for this plot line. Like, it shouldn't have been more than these 3 books to tell these characters' stories. I also love that in the 3rd book, she adapted the POVs again to best, like, gain the most of everything going on, and it just really worked. Like, the pacing of that and going back and forth between people and things, like, it worked. But it is a strange feeling to never really, like, strongly ship any of the couples that are discussed in this trilogy. Like, I had my own idea of kind of what I wanted to see, but I do understand, like, why certain characters connected more, you know, whether that's friendship, romance, or alliances, like anything like that. Like, I get it, but it's just my own heart. I'm like, ugh, there's some things I would have wanted to have seen differently. And then at the very end of this, finishing this, I was like, okay, I just feel like there are a couple loose ends that I wish I had more information on, but it wasn't enough that, like, I couldn't kind of project the future of these characters living on their life. So it wasn't enough for me to, like, really be upset with it. But it was like, I wish I had a couple more answers on that. So all in all, I do recommend this trilogy. And I think if you went into it with that right mindset, understanding you are not getting, like, this 50-50 fantasy romance split, then you will really enjoy this. And I mean, it's worth definitely giving it a shot. Okay, next up, we are going to be talking about Forging Silver into Stars. What a surprise this book was. I gave this book 4.25 stars. Now, I strictly checked this book out from my library because it had Bridget Kimmerer's name on it. Like, I had no idea what this book was. I saw that it was the first book in a series and it was the only book out, but I was like, okay, check it out. So I finished the Cursebreaker Trilogy And I'm like, I'm so sad that, you know, I'm going to be done with these characters in this world, but, you know, like, I understand the conclusion of a 3-book trilogy. Open this up, and I get a map involving 2 of the kingdoms that are from that world. And I'm like, was no one going to tell me that this world continued? Like, what? So I was honestly scared going into this because I was like, you know, I talked about my kind of displeasures with some of the couples that are in that book. So I was like, okay, am I gonna have that, you know, thrown in my face? Are we getting those POVs from those characters? I don't know. Or I'm still gonna be kind of confused and a little like at odds. No. It takes place like 4 or 5 years after the Cursebreaker Trilogy, and we get 3 different POVs. Now, one of them is from one of the side characters that's in, I think, just the 3rd book, but maybe also the 2nd. No, definitely the 2nd. So the 2nd and 3rd book, one of those side characters has his main POV in here. And then we have 2 other POVs that essentially we're continuing into this world. It's a continuation of Cursebreakers, and you have 2 POVs from best friends that are in this small village, and then that 3rd POV is from someone that's kind of involved in all the mess that happened in the Cursebreaker trilogy. Oh my gosh. The continuation of this story was honestly perfect. Like, it made sense to me, and I was like, I actually like that we're getting that continuation of this world. Like, I love it. I love that it's separate enough that, like, I'm not really thinking about that Cursebreaker trilogy, but I understand the foundation of why we're here. And I'm also really glad that Bridget didn't push getting POVs from any characters that are in that. Like, any of those main characters that we got POVs from in there, like, she didn't push that in here, and I was very grateful. This kind of reminds me of the entanglement of the Caraval trilogy and the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. Like, technically, you could read Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy first. You would just have some things spoiled for you that happened in Caraval, but ultimately, I mean, it's your choice. Like, if it doesn't matter to you that much, like, read them out of order, you know? And that's kind of like here. Like, if you read this, you're gonna have things spoiled for you for sure, 110% of what happens in the Cursebreaker trilogy. But if it doesn't really matter to you, if also you maybe started that and you're like, I just don't think like I'm enjoying this storyline, maybe you could just jump into this. And then things are summarized to you at certain parts of this that just kind of help you get the history real quick background. So you could do it either way, just knowing like jumping into this, that trilogy will be spoiled for you. So your call. I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed this book so much. And I loved the like friendship and mental health discussions in such honestly a beautiful way. Like, she does such a great job of that. And also the LGBTQIA plus representation, stunning. Stunning. I love reading my review on this because I'm thinking of past JC that wrote this, you know, just finished book 1, and I'm like, girl, just wait. Like, just wait for 2 and 3. You're gonna die. Okay, book 1, Defy the Night. I gave this book 4.75 stars. I can't really pinpoint, you know, what it's lacking, I guess, to not make it a 5-star rating. But if it's a 5-star, like, you just know it. Like, it's also a feeling. So there was something, but I mean, it's so close because 4.75 stars, like, oh, this is so good. My favorite part of when I entered this was the fact that I remember just reading the first 2 chapters to get started. I was like, girl, you haven't read it in a few days. Like, just pick the book up. I'm just asking that you read the first 2 chapters. And I did it, and that changed everything. I read the first chapter from our main female character, Tessa, and then I read the first chapter of our main male character, Coric. Now, I read that, and I remember just, like, being so immediately invested in what happened to those 2 characters. Not necessarily together. Now, I, assumed, oh, these are the 2 characters. That's going to have some probably relationship in the future. But it was the fact that as individuals, I was already feeling so invested to know how they progress and how they develop and what happens with them as individuals. And I think that really speaks to Bridget Kimmerer's writing to just be able to do that in the first 2 chapters. Absolutely stunning. This YA fantasy romance is quite underrated in my opinion. Like, I've seen more reviews on it over the last month, but I'm like, this needs talked about so much more. Overall, you have this kingdom of Kandala. And so you have Prince Coric, and then Tessa is an apothecary apprentice. And so overall in this Kandala Kingdom, there is a fever, like there's a sickness. And the only known cure is the Moonflower Elixir. But realistically, think about anything in any world, it costs money, right? You know, the poor are dying because they can't afford as much, and it just causes havoc. And so that is kind of the main setting of this world that you need to know going in, or, you know, that you'll just quickly understand going into this. You can go in as blind as you want, I guess. That's the most I'm really going to talk about the plot of this, but that's your setting, okay? I just became so obsessed with this so quickly. Book 1, absolutely stunning. I loved her pacing of this. I loved the balance of the POVs, how this progressed. I love that I cared so much about the like main plot that was going on, kind of like with the kingdom and the people and the side characters. And then I love our 2 main characters and seeing them as individuals and then how their, you know, paths cross. Like, wow. This book. Okay, Defend the Dawn, book 2. I gave this book 4.75 stars. The plot continuation of this book was immaculate. It takes off right where book 1 ends, and honestly, Bridget Kimmerer just throws you in the deep end, right? She said, hope you can swim. And I'm like, whew, okay. I don't think I was ever bored while reading this either, because you're following 2 plot lines going on, and I think that allowed the pacing to be so well done in what is like 430 pages of this book. Like, that takes skill. So while we did continue following the 2 main characters from book 1, I love that we were, you know, introduced to more characters here, and we also gained more from the characters that we already knew from book 1. So we have an additional couple POVs in this as well that's thrown in. Like, y'all, this book. In summary, I loved it. I just reread the review I posted on this just last night because I finished it late last night. Oh my gosh, it's probably the longest review that I've done. But book 3, Destroy the Day, I gave this book 4.25 stars. I mean, overall, guys, this trilogy, I mean, it has a special place in my heart forever and always. Like, I will recommend this book to anyone that I meet and will listen to me talk. Heading into this book, I think it really benefited me, the fact that I read the Cursebreaker Trilogy and then the Forging Silver into Stars, because I understood more of her writing style. So in this book, you do have less romance going on than you did in the first 2 books, but I didn't feel like I was missing out on the less romance because I was kind of already reading books with that different mindset of her writing. So I really enjoyed the kind of more political plotline side of things in this. And don't get me wrong, so you have this very like obvious romance story plotline going on, but then you also gain this like subtle, slow burn secondary romance situation going on. And I'm like, now wait a minute. Like, it's really touched on here, and you kind of have the hints of it in Defend the Dawn. And I love that. Now, overall, this book got a little lower rating for a few reasons. I do wish that we would have had more interaction between Korik and Tessa. Like, I understood why we didn't for a majority, but I wish that we would have had more, considering how long this book is. It's definitely the longest in the trilogy. It's like 540 pages. I also wish that that secondary romance was explored a little more, because when it first was like happening, I was like, this feels like a little out of left field. Like, I feel like we were being told things more than like showed things across the trilogy. So I was like, okay, like once I kind of got more into it, then like I became a lot more invested in it. But I was like, wait, what? And then there are just like some things that happen in this 3rd book that you're like waiting on. Like, you're anticipating throughout the book of certain moments to happen, and then when they finally do, it was just like a little anticlimactic. That's a weird word that I don't even know if I said correctly, but you know what I'm saying. And so we just had this like we had this anticipation of when this was going to happen and what it was going to be like. And then I was like, that's it. So there was like a little moments, things like that, that kind of just made it knock down a little bit. But overall, 4.25 stars is still a really great rating. I love Bridget Kimmerer normalizing romance for all in her books. We once again have that LGBTQIA plus representation. And I love, once again, like the conversations of friendship and mental health that she uses her characters to kind of discuss. I love that. I love that that's kind of something within her books. I'm just so glad that she wrote these and allowed me to be a part of this world. I think Bridget Kimmerer is officially an auto-buy author for me. Holy smokes, guys. That was insane. That was a lot. And honestly, it took many takes because sometimes I just struggle to talk about books. But we need to switch gears into my TBR. So I'm going to go get a couple of books that I know I want to be reading this month, like for different videos or just like books that I'm interested in. And then we'll come back and we'll also look at the polls and see what people voted on that I should be adding to my TBR. Whew, okay, let's see if we can make these not fall. This is scary. I don't like this. Okay, let's go through these first and then we'll check my Instagram stories to see kind of how things shaped up. First up, Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. This is like kind of the OG Peter Pan, and I think it will really help me to read this first before reading Never, because this is kind of the version that Jessa kind of suggested her readers read before heading into her book, and I think my understanding of the kind of origin story, which we all know, guys, like Disney origin stories are not like fluffy, okay? There's a lot of bad things. So I feel like understanding the origin of Peter Pan will help me probably better prepare for Never. So that's the first book. Next up is Vow of Thieves. I've been dying to get to this, but like I just haven't done it. I mean, you guys saw I went on this complete unhinged Bridget Kimmerer reading extravaganza. So there's that. But when I rewatched my November wrap-up this morning, I was like, girl, you were obsessing over Dance of Thieves. Like, and you said, I can't wait to read Vow of Thieves, like ASAP. Here I am at the end of January. So I'm getting to this in February. And then, oh goodness, guys, it's happening. It's happening. Books 5, 6, 7 of Harry Potter. I'm going to be doing the part 2 of that read and watch series with Harry Potter. I put up a poll on my community page asking which ones you wanted to see next. You know, whether or not it was like the Harry Potter part 2 or like if you wanted to see like Dune or The Hunger Games or something like that. And Harry Potter won, so here I am. I want to do that this month. Then for another video, I'm going to be finishing ACOTAR. How excited are we? Holy smokes, these are some really thick books. So I've already started ACOWAR and I'm also annotating it, so it just takes me some more, just time to do that. But annotating is very fun. And I really told myself in 2024 that I want to actually take the time to enjoy the books that I'm reading more. And if I want to annotate, then annotate, because I would just kind of put this pressure on myself, like, read a book as fast as you can, and so like annotating would just be like out of the picture. But I annotated the first book, annotated half of the second before I got in my own head and was like, oh, you have to finish this so quick. So I stopped annotating and just binged the rest of the book. Stupid. So I'm going to be reading these for a video, and those are the ones I have set already that I know I'd like to read into February. So now we need to head into my Instagram stories. I'm not really sure what to expect, so we'll just have to see. I think I posted these in order of Powerless and Never first. So this was one about like, what do you want to see a reading vlog on? Okay, Powerless won. Slay. Honestly, like a 70-30 pretty much, so okay, I want to read both of these, honestly, because I want to read that Peter Pan, but I'll try to do a reading vlog on Powerless this month as well. Okay, and then the next one I think I did was The Queen's Rising and A River Enchanted. Whoa, slow down, stories. Okay, A River Enchanted won by like a 65-35 split. And then the last one being The Secret History and Ninth House. Ninth House won, though this one's a little closer, 56-44 split. So, Ninth House. Sorry, I'm just like seeing I was gonna say I'm seeing the stack over here, and then I realized there's more sitting right there that's not a part of the stack. This is quite ambitious, don't you think? But here we are. Okay, let's see if I can carry these. So these are the books that I hope to read in February. We'll check back in my February reading wrap-up and to see how I do. I am definitely a mood reader, so I feel like I actually have quite a good, like, I don't know, I can't think of a word to describe that I have different genres going on. to help me. I mean, it's a lot of fantasy, but also just kind of different storylines. And so we'll see how I do. Well, guys, that wraps up my January reading wrap up and February TBR. This was fun. I liked doing this way. Please let me know if you would like me to do my wrap ups and TBR kind of like this moving forward to kind of make it more of a routine. So I had fun. I hope you did as well. Hopefully you got some recommendations. Hopefully we are going on a journey together with some of these books. Please let me know if you've read any of these and you think like, girl, if you do not read this in February, I'm unsubscribing. Like, let me know when it's that serious. You know what I mean? Okay, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.